Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak, as we continue season number 3 of At the Mic. This week, we sit down with my friend Ellen Wheeler. And does she have a story to tell that takes her from Utah to Hollywood and then into the world of politics? That's next. First, let's talk about an American hero who lived over a century ago, a great man named Frederick Douglass. He was a former slave who went on to influence one of the giants of the American presidency, Abraham Lincoln. Douglass lived an amazing life. And in fact, he was the most photographed American in the 19th century. Frederick Douglass, wow. His stern, direct gaze was as intentional as his writing. He used the new medium to help defeat the happy, ignorant slave stereotype. His look is legend. A quote from Douglass that I just love is that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So true. Another memorable quote of his. I love this. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Frederick Douglass. Such a way with words that we can apply to today. Well, in honor of this great American, the Frederick Douglass Coffee Blend from American Pride Roasters Coffee is a special micro lot. It just means it came from a very small batch on a single farm. Well, this micro lot blend is from Colombia, and like its namesake, it's complex in its flavor, but it's bold and smooth at the same time. It's got a sweet chocolate caramel finish that will energize your day. Head over to APR Coffee and try this and so many other blends available for both the occasional coffee drinker or someone who powers through cup after cup every day. And remember, as always, use promo code ATM at checkout. Get you 10% off. ATM stands for At the Mic when you purchase coffee from aprcoffee.com. Get on this before you forget. aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Ellen Wheeler is my guest on this week's edition of At the Mic. She and I were co-workers at The Blaze until she headed back to her ranch in the Utah mountains in one of the most beautiful parts of the country. She and I talked about her fascinating life and her incredible story in the ash of Mount St. Helens. Wow, she's got some stories to tell. So let's get things started right now on At the Mic. Before I hit the record button, you were starting to tell me about why you take notes. Because you see, I have the email that I send out to my guests printed up here, and I have a pen. But you were talking about how when you take notes, you use a Sharpie. And I was interested. I was like, wait till we start the podcast. So tell me why a Sharpie is supreme in this endeavor.
Okay, there are several reasons. I do not like ballpoint pens. The first is that I am not a good writer, printing, copybook cursive, all that stuff. I hate it. The pen goes too fast. Mm-hmm. My hand starts going faster than my hand can control itself. Yeah. And so it just makes a mess all over. Then the ink also spreads, your hand gets in it and the ink spreads. That's I know you're supposed to hold your fingers up and not rest your hand, but I'm too lazy when I'm writing. Yep. So I get ink smeared all over. Okay. Then secondly, Sharpies. And Sharpies have resistance. When you're trying to write, there's a little bit of squeaky resistance on the paper so they don't go so fast. Oh. 2, they're bolder and my eyes are going.
Quick glance down, you can see your notes and stuff.
You can see your notes. Now, the other thing is a pencil. I love to write with a pencil. That's because it has some resistance as well.
There's maintenance involved there.
Yeah, there is. But the other thing is I wear my hair up in this ponytail.
Okay.
And you can stick a pencil easily through your hair.
You can do that with a pen?
No, you cannot.
Why not?
Because pens, so first off, if you do it, so I'm grabbing your pen. But if I stick this pen in here, ink goes on your scalp.
But is that bad?
Yeah. Do you
Why?
want, look at your scalp. I can see your scalp. If you got ink all over your scalp, you just look ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I look ridiculous with or without the ink.
Anyway,
but
so
no one's going to see it in your scalp. But I understand your point about the Sharpie. In fact, with show prep every morning with Pat Gray, I produce Pat Gray Unleashed here at The Blaze, and I'm sure people can see it on camera all the time. Notes that I've written for Pat in Sharpie because I am trying to make it quick because,
right, because you can just glance down.
Yes, because ballpoint pen, you can't read my handwriting at all. And it's moderately better with a Sharpie.
Yeah.
So I understand your point.
I guess the one problem with that is that it does take up more paper. So it's sort of anti-environmentalist.
I don't care.
To
I
use the
don't
Sharpie.
care. Yeah, that never crosses my mind. I kill an entire forest full of trees every morning with the printer. Not a part of my calculus. But this being said, now with the pen and stuff, right? Maybe one reason I don't want to use a Sharpie here today is I don't want you to be able to read what I'm about to ask you. You see what I'm saying? Because you're sitting right here in such close quarters.
That's true. That's true. So see if you keep it, and that's true from this far away.
Yeah.
I can't. I would have to put my glasses on to be able to see that.
Yeah.
I can't see anything.
And
there.
if
It's
you
just a
do-
bunch of scribbles.
Right. If at any point during this conversation I see you put your glasses on, I'm going to start moving the paper.
Well, as
so
a
you
matter of
can't
fact,
read it.
I don't know that you don't just have a bunch of scribbles written down there, and you're just trying to fool me into
That's
thinking
right.
that you actually have prepared some questions.
So so you were born and raised in Glendale, California.
Glendale, California.
Oh, Glendale?
My Glendale.
Wait a minute. Wait,
My-
okay,
well, I'm a
hold
bad
on.
typist as well.
Oh,
so,
okay, because it says
so-
Glenda.
So, but my parents, so I like to say Hollywood because my parents lived in Hollywood and the Glendale Hospital was the closest hospital. So I was actually born in Glendale, but I lived in Hollywood, and there's something awesome about I was born in the 60s in the Hollywood Hills. That's a neat time to have been in Hollywood. I don't remember it because
You
we
don't-
moved away.
Yeah, how old were you when you moved away?
We moved away from Hollywood when I was a year.
Oh.
And so, but then I stayed in Southern California till I was 9. And then I moved to
okay.
Southern Utah.
I gotcha. Okay.
So I'm a half California, half Utah.
I got you. What got your family? Because that's two different worlds completely. Southern California, Southern Utah. What was the impetus to get you guys moved?
Yeah, I don't think it was that different than a lot of things parents are going through today. My parents were looking at the education system and saying, we don't like what's happening here in education. We want to move our children somewhere else. And they were looking at Oregon and Idaho, Wyoming. They were looking at places up north, and Southern Utah was kind of halfway. So it was a place they would stop often as they were looking
Oh, wow.
at these other places. And pretty soon they were like, we'll stop here because we think it's nice. Maybe we should just move here. So it was literally like
your parents did what I threaten my kids and my wife with all the time. We're moving to the Rockies. We're moving to the mountains. We're moving to Montana. You know, it sounds like they actually just did that.
they completely did that.
Because my mom actually, when she and my stepdad retired, they actually moved to Southern Utah, which is so ironic that tucked way up in the hills where you live today on a ranch, far from the insanities of the world. Before I knew you, I actually, ironically enough, was up in this area right where you live today. I'm sure I saw your ranch, and I love that area of the country. Southern Utah, when you get up from the desert floor, the day I was there in the middle of summer, it was 35 degrees cooler up there.
I live in the high desert. So I'm if you're looking for a place to go, I would say come to Southern Utah, except I want it to stay how
Right.
it is. So,
Right. That's like every
please,
good place.
Please don't come here because unless you want it to stay the same too. Right.
Yeah.
But
So
we moved and I loved it. We moved to a very small trailer in a very small trailer park, and I grew up mostly in a trailer.
wow.
Living in an 8 by 32 foot trailer.
I want to touch on that big time here. But first, I want to say to your point about ruining places, I got in so much trouble when the family and I went to Montana, and practically it felt like every hour of every day for the next 3 weeks, I would just post pictures of Montana. because it's so great. And I got so many people messaging me or saying in public, "Stop it!
Yeah.
Stop it! We want to
Don't
keep it
tell
the way it is."
anybody how good
But
it
isn't
is here.
That's what's happening to so many great places in this country. Is the really nice places, the secret gets out, and then before you know it, it's as bad as the places these people ran from.
So I have to say though, Keith, I think that you can look at any place you live in as good. Like I lived in New York for most of my adult life, New York City, and I love New York City too. And I think there's great things about living there. Not just a few great things. It's not like I'm just saying, oh, I raised my children there. I think New York is fantastic, and I would move back there in a second. I love it. So I think that great or what makes a place great is different to everyone. You know, people are looking for different kinds of things, and then I do think a lot of that is the attitude you take. Like, what am I going to appreciate about where I live? And I really think it's important to do that, because you could end up saying, oh, I hate it here. And your next door neighbor may think the same place is fantastic. You're just not taking the time to sort of recognize what you have.
It was
there are no good restaurants in my town. I love living there, but if I want to go out, every restaurant owner in my town now is, I'm not going to get a lot of free dinners now.
3 or 4, maybe tops, right?
So it's, there are always things to like in the place that you currently live in.
That the only issue when I lived in New Jersey was my attitude?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Kind of like your attitude is now.
What was my attitude right now?
Well, don't you think you like to at least put on this ruse of being cynical?
Ruse?
Yes.
I'm very cynical. I am very concerned. That's why I started this podcast, because the state of the world in talking politics every day is so maddening that I came to this podcast to have a refuge from the storm. And it's insane out there.
It is insane. I mean, the state of the world is insane in lots of ways, but the state of the world is great. I mean, there's never been so many great things either.
I need this. Give me this.
When you and I were young, did we actually think we would have a tiny computer in our hands and be able to communicate to everybody? Did we think we'd be able to watch every movie that ever existed in a moment's notice?
I did think I was going to have
Did I think I'd be able to shop?
Right. I thought I was going to have a watch with a TV on it so I could watch football and baseball wherever I went. But I never thought in a million years it was going to have the computing power to get me to the moon if I needed to.
I mean, if I could right now call the grocery store, not call, but like shop. I can see exactly what groceries are in the grocery store next to my mom where she lives, and I can have someone from that grocery store deliver groceries to her without ever going to the store. But I know how many jars of mayonnaise they have in the store. Like those are kind of some miraculous things. We can come up with vaccines for a disease we didn't know existed 2.5 years ago. We can have a vaccine for it right away. I'm saying there are really fantastic things about being in the world today too.
But I'm not arguing with convenience or technology or advancement or things that make our lives easier. I'm saying, just from a macro perspective, the state of this country compared to where it was when we were kids is light years away. You disagree?
I spend a lot of time thinking that the state of the country is really bad. But then when I actually do try to sit down and read the history, I'm not sure that the people who were my age 100 years ago didn't think the state of the country was really bad.
Right.
And so I try to keep myself, well, no, I don't try to keep myself. My wonderful husband tries to keep me from going off the rails in my upsetness at the state of the country, because it is good to remember that in sort of every generation has that feeling of like, oh my goodness, things are going off the rails.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it sparked a revolution that created this very country that we're sitting in right now, in this climate-controlled facility with this magic capability to record this conversation
and talk to hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, no, this podcast, millions of downloads every episode.
Sorry, I did not mean to underplay it.
Thank you. For some reason, it just doesn't show up on Apple that way. Anyhow, because that is a great point that you're talking about.
And the state of politics was bad. I mean, if you read the articles from 100 years ago, they were like, oh my gosh, this election, I can't believe, this is the state of politics today. I can't believe how corrupt things are. I mean, this is often we're often tied up in knots. Now, do I think the end of the world is coming? Quite possibly. So I don't want to underplay that part either.
Okay. And I mean this with all I hate to say with all due respect because it sounds like just the opposite. But is it easier to have that optimistic perspective when you live in such an isolated, far away from the chaos kind of setting?
Yeah. I mean, well, and of course, why did I choose to live in an isolated, idealistic kind of place? And surrounded by a lot of people who also have an idealistic view of holding on to American values. I mean, I do feel strongly that we have to kind of get back to that and think about what is the most important to us, but not fight about what's the most important, because really most of us agree when we're kind of getting into that, what are the values we hold dear? Yeah.
Well, let's go back to your childhood where you are the oldest of 7 siblings.
7 siblings. Girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl.
So
my parents were very organized.
How far removed in age are you from the youngest then?
Almost 20 years.
Wow. So you were a de facto mom to some of them, right? In a way.
Oh, I was in more than just a way.
Tell
me. Well, when I was in my early 20s, my parents got a divorce and it didn't go well. The baby was at that time only about 5 and it didn't go well, and neither one of them could handle taking care of the kids. So there was my brother. I was 20, my mid to early 20s, and my brother was 3 years younger. And then there was a 10-year gap after that. So
how organized were your parents then? I mean,
yeah. So all my brothers and sisters came to live with my brother and I.
Wow.
So we raised them for the next few years. So I'm very close to because of that, I'm extremely close to my siblings.
So you found the I guess the benefit of dark times.
Yeah. And I'm not sure it was, I'm not saying it wasn't hard, but I wouldn't call it dark. It was difficult, but it was also, like I said, it was really wonderful. It brought us together, and we can serve and understand each other now, still to this day. Yeah. I'm not saying lots of siblings aren't close, but this kind of, we only had each other, so it kind of causes this, you have to band together as this group of people. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not saying I was a very good mom during that time. I tell them all now, like, if you guys have any problems, you really can blame it on me, because I was completely experimenting. All of a sudden I'm raising 9 and 12-year-olds. Like I don't know.
Did they turn out okay then?
Yeah, I think they turned out great.
Okay,
I think
good.
They're fantastic.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
I still invite them over for Thanksgiving, so it must be okay.
That's good. So you end up going to Southern Utah State and Brigham Young University. So when you guys, let me back up there, because it's to be assumed that, for the most part, when you go to BYU, you're LDS.
Yes.
Right? So when did you become LDS? Was it before you moved to Utah or once you got there?
Oh, no. I was born into a religious family.
Oh, wow.
And I've always been a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Even in Southern California, they allow Mormons to live there?
This was a few years ago, so things like that were still okay.
Okay. All right. Very good. So you end up going to BYU.
I went to BYU first. And I was at BYU for part of a semester. I made it through part of a semester. And then I got offered a job acting in a play that was touring. And I sat there and weighed my situation back and forth. I'm like, I could pay someone to act, or someone could pay me to act.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because I was going to ask you, how do you go from Southern California to Utah and then into acting? And here you go. There was a traveling show, huh?
Yeah. So I'm super lucky. I went into my family business. That sounds weird, but when I was growing up, my parents owned a theater like that's how they made their living when I was very young in Southern California. They owned their own live theater. We lived in the back office. So I was never not at rehearsal or making costumes or in a play. I did my first play when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
And I thought everyone came home from kindergarten, collated scripts and had rehearsal and then stayed up after that and built costumes. Like I didn't know all families didn't do plays together every day.
In kindergarten, yeah.
I thought that that's what you did. Like I really did. I just didn't know that all families didn't do musicals together.
That was your normal.
Exactly. Like, your dad owns a drugstore or you run a farm or you do Sound of Music when you're 6, like I just thought everybody did that.
So how old were you when you joined with this group that was passing through?
17.
Wow. And where were they based out of?
They were some theater company out of Utah and we toured the Western United States.
Oh, okay.
So I toured for like a summer.
Wow.
And did a play through the whole summer. And then I came back and I was like, oh, I guess I should go to college. I guess that would be good. And so I went to Southern Utah University after that. And then, but my dad, who came from the Hollywood era, said to me, why are you... What? This is not my advice to the children out there today.
Oh no!
Nobody listened to what I did. Don't do what I do. Do what your parents say.
Okay.
No, not what I say, but what your parents say. But my dad said the opposite thing to me. He said, "Why are you wasting your best acting years in college? You are the most sellable and the most viable as an actress between the ages of 17 and 30. And if you spend 4 or 5 of them in college, you're really cutting that time off."
I like the way Dad thinks.
So I packed up my AMC Pacer and drove to Hollywood. Like that. I just got in the car and drove out.
And no plan. You just showed up and like, I'm going to figure this out.
No plan.
So then take us through how things were out there, because I know eventually you end up with a big role on daytime soap opera.
Yeah. I paid my dues like everybody else. So my dad had worked with a theater that is still in Southern California. When I was very young and lived out there, he had worked there. So I literally just went to their theater and I was like, "Hi, you don't remember me, but I used to come here when I was 3 years old. Do you have any jobs?" And they said, "Sure, you're, Jay Wheeler's daughter. We'll give you a job working in the box office." And the lady in the box office said, "I'll rent you a room in my house." So I lived in a room in her house and I worked at that theater until I couldn't live in her house anymore. And then I lived in the prop room of the theater for a couple of years.
Wow.
I worked there and I slept on a bed that wasn't even the size of a twin bed. Like it was built to be a tiny bed for on a stage. Yeah.
So wait a minute. You were using props as your living quarters.
Yeah. I mean, just the whole prop room, like, the costumes and the props, everything hanging on the wall.
Drive me insane.
Oh, it was
people coming through there, picking out stuff.
Because I was a poor actor, you're not making any money.
Right, but I'm just saying just the principle of people rummaging basically through your stuff effectively.
Well, it wasn't my stuff.
I got it. But it was. I don't know. I think there's squatters' rights at some point during the story,
But it was really fun because you have Roman armor and covered stuff from Covered Wagons, right? Like
How
it's
did that
all
make dating life.
I was a very devoted actor. I did not do a lot of, my acting career was very serious to me at that point. And I spent pretty much all my time pursuing it. Yeah, then I got an agent and I did all of the things that you do. Like I waitressed a graveyard shift from 11 at night to 7 in the morning so that I could audition during the day. And, I eventually got a commercial and then another commercial and then a one-line speaking role.
You remember what the products were?
Yes. My first commercial was a Christmas Chevy commercial.
Oh, wow. Are any of these on YouTube?
I have no idea.
Oh, my gosh. We're totally going to find them. Okay. So, all right. When did you meet Shannon, your husband?
I met Shannon in high school.
Oh, wow.
But we did not date.
Okay.
I was...
Oh, no.
I was a senior when Shannon was a sophomore. And senior girls
got
do
it.
not date sophomores.
Right.
Like that is just not something.
He
that
needs
you-
to check
yeah.
in on you later.
Hello,
not
exactly.
while we're in school together.
Yeah, exactly. It's 10 years after high school.
Okay.
And I have moved to New York. So I've gotten, one job after another. Eventually I get a job on a soap opera that takes me to New York. That leads to another job on a soap opera. And, by now I consider myself a pretty serious actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been supporting myself for a long time, taking care of things.
Yeah. What were the shows you were on, by the way?
My first big contract role was on Another World.
Okay. Yep.
And I did that, and then I did All My Children, and then I did Bold and the Beautiful, and then I did Another World again, and then I moved to As the World Turns, but as a director.
Okay, weren't you played a big part and you were an evil twin all at the same time? How was
in
that?
real life, or
No, on the show.
because my husband would say I'm an evil twin now.
Yeah. Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
you are completely right. And so in my first job at Another World, it was so fun. It was really awesome. In my first job at Another World, I was playing like the 16-year-old ingenue. There's always a 16-year-old ingenue on every soap opera, right?
Huh.
Like there's the sweet girl who everybody.
You're gonna make me Google ingenue. What just
like the young
hipster?
No, the young pretty, the young.
Oh.
I'm saying pretty, but like the young, sweet,
Okay.
innocent.
I mean, I gotta be honest. I didn't watch too many soap operas.
Well,
but
and ingenue is. I mean,
got it.
That's the young, sweet heroine girl.
how many soap operas are even left today? That's sad.
I think each network has one.
Okay. Sorry
is all.
to derail you there, but-
CBS may still have two.
Okay.
Anyway, and I loved playing her, and they came to me after I'd been doing it for about 6 months, and they said, "Hey, we were watching you, and we think possibly there's this other side to you, and you could play like a twin." And she would be like the mean sister. So like twins that got separated at birth, and one got raised because the ingenue was like, from a lovely, wealthy family, and just everything was perfect in her life. And so the other twin's gotten, skirted off and has grown up poor and disheveled and all on
nice
her own.
storyline.
And she's all rough around the edges. But I had not grown up and rough around the edges, so I really felt like I had to do some studying to come up with that. Like I read my first what I called like trashy romance novel. Like I'd never done stuff like that. I was a very kind of sweet, innocent-ish person.
You
I'd
were
been raised in that.
What was the word?
Ingenue.
Thank you. That was you.
Yeah.
So you had to really.
So I felt
learn
like I
this
had
other
to
role.
go outside of myself. And but that was fun. I mean, that's what that's some of what acting is all about.
Were you ever shooting a scene for one of the characters and accidentally were in the wrong character?
Oh, never.
No.
No, never. And that was that was for sure the most fun, because I did, you'd start in the morning as one character, and then you'd have to switch like your costume and your clothes, and you'd go back and play the other character. And I did a lot of scenes with myself, right? Like me talking to me.
Yeah.
So, you have to remember exactly how you read the line when you read it before. It was super fun.
It almost sounds like you were getting paid to
have psychotherapy.
to be schizophrenic, effectively. But now, did you get paid? Because this is what I've always wondered. Because there's a show on Hulu right now that me and the family watch, Benedict Society or something like that, where the main character plays two roles.
Mm-hmm.
He plays, just like you're saying, a good brother and a bad brother. And I've often wondered, is it written into the contracts? Like, I'm going to get paid for two roles, or is it just comes with the territory?
Well, so I don't know how it works, especially if a role that you're signing on to is already two roles, right? Like when I signed on,
yeah.
I was only hired to play one character.
Gotcha.
So when they came to me now, and an evil twin is kind of a soap opera trope, right? Like we use it, they use it a lot, right?
Yeah.
So there lots of people have played their own twin or evil twin in soap operas. So when they came to me and said, hey, would you like to do this? I was like, sure, that would be fantastic. And then literally the night before my evil twin was supposed to show up, I called my agent and I was like, they've never contacted me, but I'm going to be playing a new character. And I don't think, like, I looked at my contract and it only says that I play one. And she was like, well, yeah, but you don't get paid twice for playing two characters. And I'm like, well, that's not right.
Right.
I was like, that is not what I contracted to do. I contracted to come here and play this role. So I was one of the first soap opera actors to sort of say, hey,
wow,
I started this new trend, and they started
Did they
paying
get
people.
it resolved before you?
Oh yeah, they resolved it that
started
night.
the scene. Oh wow.
But I
Good for
wasn't
you.
meaning to be a pain. It just
Right,
to me
it just
it
kinda
seemed
hit you like, wait a minute.
To me it seemed normal. Like I'm going to be doing the work of two people.
Exactly. Like if you had a sister in the show and it was a completely different individual,
Correct.
human being,
They would pay her.
right.
Exactly.
I'm so glad that-
So I really wasn't trying to be like as somebody who became an executive producer of a soap opera later. I know what a pain in the butt, talent can be. So looking at it from the other side, I'm sure they were like, this so-and-so actress, she just thinks she's so awesome. I really wasn't trying to be like that.
They were probably trying to sneak it by you on
It just
budget
didn't
and stuff.
occur to me. It just didn't occur to me that they wouldn't pay. It's two characters. You're doing
I'm
the work
glad-
of two
yeah,
people.
That makes total sense. Did you have more fun acting in soap operas or directing and producing?
So fun is such a like big term, right? Like what thing is more fun? Acting is easier in this way. It's more self-devastating because you're responsible only for yourself. Like as an actor, that's what you're responsible for. But it's also, I think it's why actors can become so self-destructive, right? Like everything is about you all day long.
Okay.
So you become you have to be a little obsessed with yourself. How you look, what you're doing, you do.
Hollywood, is that you?
I've
never heard of such a thing.
So, but they have to be like, that is literally what their job is. That's what they're selling. That's what they're doing. So it's not that I think they shouldn't be that. That's, this is what I have to offer as my product is me. So I have to think about my product all the time. And that part of it I found really hard. Like I got bored with myself pretty soon. I was like,
Even playing two characters?
I'm like just so like,
Wow.
I'm just not that interesting. After a while, I'm like, I'm just, and so I love directing and producing because it's much more collaborative, right? Like
gotcha.
directing and producing is about how you work with other people and making sure you make their jobs easy and making sure you like, what is their talent and how can I bring that talent to life?
But let me ask you this. And if I picked the wrong phrase, my apologies. But is the herding of cats with the role as being in charge, right? And I'm talking about you're trying to get all these actors to get along and mesh well in scenes and stuff like that, right? Is that challenge better for you as Ellen Wheeler than I get so bored with myself that it's not a challenge? What would you rather have? The boredom of the acting or
and it's not, so I'm not bored acting. Okay. I love acting and it's very fun. I just get bored with myself, like thinking about myself, right? Like you have to worry about, are you, I don't know, am I eating correctly? Am I getting enough sleep? Everything is about you. Because that's your career is, I mean, in a way, all of us, our careers are about us, but your product is you. When your product is the soap opera itself, then that's your main drive, but I love acting because it's fun. It's just fun. Producing is not always fun. Can be super stressful.
So your career with directing soap operas, right? How did you transition out of that realm into the more roles that you're in now? Tell us how.
Well, now I'm just a mom, Keith.
Now you're just. Oh, by the way, I'd like to point out that when you were 8 years old, you wrote down on a piece of paper that you wanted to have how many children? One followed by an entire sheet's worth of zeros.
Yeah, well, I know I wasn't quite old enough to understand what I was
Do you
doing.
still have that piece of paper?
I do actually.
Yes,
I still have it.
Yes, you got to send me a picture.
I still have it. But I was writing notes. I was sitting in church and writing notes back and forth to my boyfriend, like the boy that I liked. And
at 8 years old.
Yeah, his name was Douglas Sorensen. So Douglas, if you're out there, this is a moment I still remember. But so we're writing notes back and forth to church. And what I say to him at 8, thinking that like it's going to be super attractive somehow. Like, I don't know. I'm sure no 8-year-old boys are sitting out there thinking, hey, what I really am thinking about today is wanting to have kids. But I was like, when we grow up and get married, I want to have, and then I put 1, 0, 0, 0. Just, I filled up the rest of the page with zeros. And then I wrote kids.
Did he get to see that?
Yeah, oh yeah, because we passed it down the row. I think probably everyone in church got to see it.
I was thinking you just wrote it in church and took it to school the next day.
You know how you pass notes in school?
I got it.
But like, I think every child in the third grade saw it.
That is awesome. Okay, so
it didn't work out though. I mean, you can
Obviously.
see that Douglas and I did not stay together.
I mean, things happen.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder if he went on to
I moved. He lived in California and I moved to Utah.
I wonder if he went on to find somebody who did give him 1, 0, 0, 0, 0.
I don't know. I've
kids.
never
Maybe
asked
he'll
him.
hear this and reply with a picture of just 2.5 kids.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
we'll see. So you're in the world of soap operas. We're talking about 80s, 90s, right in that realm? Okay.
Well, yeah, clear into the 2000s. I mean, I kept producing, well into the
So how did you
2000s.
get from that world? What happened next?
Well, I retired. I had my my older children. They were like high school and junior high age.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be home with them.
Sure.
I'd been working, for all of their childhood, and I only had a couple years left, and I wanted to just be home with them.
Yeah.
So I'm home now, and instead of making TV, I start watching more TV, because when you're making TV all day, you actually do not spend a lot of time watching it.
Yeah, can I just interject for just a moment? Is that a lot of people, they get surprised. Like, you didn't see this? You didn't watch this? Bro, I got to be honest with you. I don't watch a lot of shows. We talk politics on Pat Gray for a couple hours in the morning, and then
you spend the rest of the day researching what you're going to talk about tomorrow.
I'm keeping an eye on this crumbling world of ours. I'm not necessarily listening to other shows. That's not to take anything away from. There's some very talented people out there. It's just that I'm not in that realm where it's just on in my life. You know.
My normal day was about a 20-hour work day when I was executive producing. So I honestly, I like the movie, people ask me about the movies that came out during that 6-year period of time. And I'm like, I didn't ever see that movie.
Yeah, me either. But that's just because I don't get out much. But I understand what you're saying.
If I did try to go see it, I fell asleep I went to see all 3 is it 3 Lord of the Rings? 4? However many. Right. Like, I went to see them all. And I fell asleep within the first 10 minutes.
I
it's
feel
not
so bad for
not
my
even
kids.
that they weren't good. I'm sure they were excellent. It's just I was working a lot of hours, and it's quiet, dark.
My kids are always having to wake me up doing stuff. Dad, okay. And I'm just like, you guys enjoy it. I'll watch it later. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand.
So, but then I'm home watching TV, and actually, a lot of it came from just the news in general, kind of what you said, the state of the world. But it came from watching Glenn Beck on Fox. And he was on Fox. Anyway. So I'm watching stuff, and I'm like, the state of the world is really upsetting. So I start paying attention to politics more. I did grow up with a family that was very capitalism and conservatism.
We love America.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And so I'd always been very aware of that. But as I kept listening, what I noticed was that conservatives and the right are not that great at messaging. And I had just spent the last, 12 years of my life directing and producing what was only like, how do you reach people emotionally, right? Like that's what a soap opera is all about, is like, how do you connect to them on an emotional level,
Make them want to keep coming back.
not a cerebral level, but how do you like really, make them want to come back
if
because
you're not
they're
invested
connected
in the character, then why do I care what happens to him tomorrow?
And I so I was reading some information that came in on my computer, and one came in from Freedom Works, like a right-leaning group.
Yeah.
And on the same day, I got one from Barack Obama. And the one from Freedom Works was, I mean, it was actually like a conference that I wanted to go to. They were sending me an advertisement for this conference. But I think they called it like entrepreneurial conservatism in the something of the something. Do you know what I mean? I'm like,
I got you.
I'm like, yeah, that like, I mean, that sounds great,
Now all of a
but
sudden
it's
you're like,
very
maybe I don't wanna go.
cerebral,
Yeah.
right? Like
I got you.
And then that day, the one that came in from Barack Obama was, like when you opened the email, it was immediately a video of a 17-year-old boy who said, "I lost my dad today."
Wow.
And it was about a shooting that had happened so it was a gun control video. Mm-hmm. And it was this 17-year-old boy talking about how in the last 2 days his dad had been shot. So which one do you think gets more attention? And I was like, if I'm at home, this is the one that I respond to, because I'm emotionally immediately, whether I believe in this, in the gun control issue or not.
If you pick just some neutral American that doesn't take sides,
even me, like, of course I'm emotionally connected. I'm not saying it made me click on it, but I'm emotionally connected to that boy. Of course I care about him. I don't want him to lose his dad. I mean, but I was like, wow, our side really needs some help. Like, we're not doing such a good job at this messaging thing. So I just went to a Freedom Works conference. I just got on a plane the next day. They were having one in Cincinnati, Ohio. I got on a plane. I flew out and walked up to Matt Kibbe, who at that time was the head of Freedom Works. And I said, hey, I've had all this time in television. Let me come help you with your messaging. Like, let me just volunteer and help you with your messaging. So that kind of led, like he said, I think he thought I was crazy. Sure. Like what person just walks up and says that?
But how many people make a difference, not only in their own lives, but go on to help organizations like that by going out on a limb and really making themselves vulnerable like that, where they're just like, yep, this could go either way. You could think I'm the craziest person in the world, we'll never talk again, or I can actually do a lot of good for your group or your organization.
Well, and luckily Matt said, sure. He was like, sure, I do think he thought I was crazy, and he kind of pawned me off on someone else.
Okay.
But I did end up kind of working with them, and then that led me to just, I've met lots of people through that, and that's mostly what I do is they'll occasionally call me. People will call and say, we have to work on this kind of messaging. When they want the cerebral, like, we need to talk about the Constitution and all of its legal ramifications, I'm not the person that they call. Right? Awesome. But when they want to say, let's talk about the Constitution and how that impacts our daily lives and how we can emotionally remind people of what's important in the Constitution, then I might be someone that they call.
Gotcha. Yeah. So in your messaging and in your attempts to connect with people, I'm sure there have been challenges along the way, and maybe you don't want to talk about this, but is there anything that stands out that you're willing to share where you can go, yeah, let me tell you about the time I couldn't get this actor to deliver a line this way, or I couldn't get a politician to understand my vision. What's been maybe a big challenge along the way that you would care to enlighten us with?
I think one of the hardest things is when you're trying to create an emotional connection and you're working with a network, like the soap operas that I worked for mostly were owned by large corporations like Procter & Gamble or Coca-Cola, that. So you're dealing with a network, ABC, CBS, whatever, maybe it's a Netflix today, but often the entity itself, the show itself, is owned by a different corporation than where it airs. So you're dealing with 3 or 4 often large corporations behind.
Wow, that's a lot of people, a lot of suits to answer to.
Correct.
Huh?
That's a lot of people to get to see the vision of how you're trying to connect. And we told several what people considered controversial storylines while I was at the soap opera, and I think it was hard to get. I was, when I was an actor, I was in the first. I played one of the first major AIDS characters
wow.
with AIDS on television anywhere. There was only a couple of people who had ever portrayed AIDS in any way. And so, dealing with that, that's the kind of, so we're talking in the 80s, right? Like we're talking when Rock Hudson had barely died. So it was like no one knew anything about it.
A major barrier knocked down.
So but when what you're trying to do is give real information, right? Like as accurate as it can be, and get people emotionally involved, so that people will stop maybe passing judgment at a time when judgment was rampant. Like it was a very, but you're trying to do it and still sell, like, people have to, the network still has to feel like they can sell commercials during this time, that time. So it can be like weaving that thread can be really tricky. I have to say that's actually one of the fun things about being a producer, though, is how do you thread that needle, right? Like you're trying to say, I need to tell this story. It has to be emotionally true. It has to be honest in its dealing with whatever the subject matter is, like in this instance, AIDS. It has to still be compelling enough that people learn something from it, because we were doing the story so that people learn something, but it can't be so preachy that Folgers doesn't want to take out an ad during this storyline. So I think to a lot of people who would consider themselves artists, that can be really challenging. They're like, then I have to not be true to my art.
Right.
But I find that challenge fascinating. I mean, Shakespeare had to do the same thing, right? Like he had to write his plays, and still the king was going to pay for them. So how do I write the play how I want it and still make sure I don't get my head chopped off,
right?
Because the king didn't like it, so I can write another play.
Right. Does every script, like for a soap opera with a Procter and Gamble behind it, does every script go through them proactively, or are there red flags that come up and they're like, we got to get this cleared? Or how much time is between a script being written before it airs?
Every show has its own dynamic that they work within, but on a soap opera, you are working at least a year out in laying out your long-term story.
Oh, wow.
Now, that doesn't mean that long-term story won't probably go through a lot of changes, because as you delve into it, you've
big chalkboard?
There's a great big, there's there's usually a great big map. And then
I'd love to see one of those.
Yeah. And then you break that down into sort of like the monthly, and then the weekly, and then the daily. And they are involved to a certain degree in all of that. Like you send that material to all of them, but certainly the major, like, here's what's going to happen this week. Here's the main story points that are going to happen this week. Mm-hmm. Certainly both the network and the whoever owns the show gets to weigh in on that, because they don't want to be surprised. Right. They don't want to get to airtime and go like, you said what about what? We don't endorse that at all. And you see that happening today all the time, right? Like something goes on the air, and then Disney is like, that's not actually right. Like that's not actually something. But but that happens more in like this, like with radio, podcasts, because they are looking at the scripts. Scripted, that doesn't happen in scripted stuff very often, because someone's looking at it.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned how there is this map, right? Is it just help me out here? Help me visualize. Is it just the wall? Like where you just see each character's name and just like roughly explain to me what you mean by a map, because that's what I envision. And then I would love to see a picture of something like that, and then like after, because I'm sure that it's guarded, right? And you let that stuff out, so they probably don't even let you take pictures. But I would love to see a show This is how I envision it, and you're going to correct me on all this, but I envision a wall full of characters, timeline, where their paths cross, little bullet points, just like you said, it's a map. This is how I envision it, and I would love to see, after a show is done with its run, to see where things actually change.
Did they actually? Yeah. Right, did they actually?
Is it like that?
It definitely is like that. Like you want to make sure you're having not all the climaxes of a story happen at once, right? Like you have to make sure they're rising and falling off of each other, and then there are some times where you do want several stories to, like we're going to make all of these stories come together right at Christmas time. Or we're going to make them all, we're going to make all the happy endings happen at Christmas time. And then off of that, we're going to have an explosion on the boat and you won't even know who's alive at the end of all these happy endings, right? Like it just depends on what you're trying to do. In the soap opera world, it's particularly complicated.
Yeah.
Because like the soap opera that I took over was on for 70 years. 70. So, you are dealing with not only how you...
As the world turns? What do I win?
Guiding light.
Guiding light. I win nothing.
So...
Okay.
You're dealing with also the history, right? Like you have to be true to the history. You can't just start writing something that you want and all of a sudden go like, oh, but this guy's actually, we're going to say that he's her cousin. You're like,
you'll hear about it.
Yeah. Oh, you totally will hear about it. So
don't be messing with my stories.
Exactly. So you're dealing with the history as well. When I became an executive producer, they sent me what they call the show Bible. And it's like, reams of papers worth of here's the information that you need to know. I got hired on a Friday to start on a Monday, and over the weekend literally just boxes showed up at my apartment in New York City, and they were like, here's what you need to know. I'm like, here's what I need to know. This is like 5 boxes of material. I certainly can't read this over the weekend. So, there was a pretty swift learning curve to catch up on.
How familiar were you with
on
the show
who is
to begin
who?
with?
I mean, you're a little bit familiar of all the soap operas, but not that deep history going back a long time, right? Like you're more aware of like the ones that are on currently today.
Wow. Okay. You mentioned the show Bible. I've heard of these where people will sell them. Somebody will write it off, and then now they sell the rights, and everything about all the characters is in there. Boom. So let's talk about the Holy Bible, because I think that's the most recent book you read. Is that accurate? Or
well,
your favorite? What?
So I am not an avid reader. Yeah. I don't read novels. If I read, it's an informational book. Usually.
Same here.
But mostly it's just because in novels, plots go very slowly. There's a lot of description, and I know that that's what people love about books, because then they're like their imagination. But
Advance the story.
Yeah, I'm like, nothing's happening. We're just talking.
The grass
exactly.
was
That's what I was just
day,
going to say. So the sand is sparkling in the sun. I'm like, I get that. The second you said it was a sandy beach, I'm like, the sun is sparkling on the sand.
Let the reader fill in.
I already
details.
got that part. But I get that other people love that. Like I'm not saying books aren't good. I think they're awesome. But because I read mostly informational books, I tend to not pick them up and necessarily read them from beginning to end, right? Like I'm often saying, I need this piece of information. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to grab this book by an author I like, or and try to glean that information out of it. But I read the Bible every day. So
and that's awesome. And help me to understand the challenges of, because you said you were raised LDS, yet you're in this Hollywood TV crazy world of acting and celebrity. What were some of the challenges? That's got to be tough to be not only religious, a Christian, but then in a conservative faith.
Yeah.
Mormonism.
I think it can be really tough. I think it's one reason that, I think parents are reticent to have their children go into the arts. And I think
you're talking to one right now.
Yeah.
I've got a little actress in my.
And certainly one reason is that it's just hard to make a living, right? Like if somebody says, hey, I want to be, I don't know, an engineer or an accountant, you have a reasonably good suspicion that
Right.
they're going to be able to find work. And I'm not saying you can't find acting. You can find a place to act. There's always somebody who will, it can be hard. You might have to audition 100 times, but there's not always somebody who will pay you to act or to sing or to paint. So I think that's really hard that way. But it's also hard because there tends to be a lot of self-destructive behavior that accompanies those things.
You're hitting on exactly how I feel as a father. Okay, so you're choosing a profession where the opportunities are
Limited,
few and far
yeah.
between, so you have a greater chance of I don't want to say the word desperate, but you're in a position where, okay, I haven't had a paying job in months. I've got to land something. So you're already in a starving artist type mindset. Then you couple it with the kind of behaviors and lifestyles that are associated with, well, Hollywood, and it just seems like you're asking for trouble. And I'm just amazed that you can make it through okay.
I don't think it's that easy. I mean, if you look up how many Mormon actors are there aren't very many,
right?
Because most people don't stay active in the church. And so I think it can be really hard. I just made up my mind ahead of time, not to. But I'm not saying it's easy. I was driving home. I think I was 20 years old. I was driving home in my car from an audition, a commercial audition, and a man pulled up in his, I won't say what kind, but very expensive car behind me, and started honking. And I thought something was wrong. Like, he was honking and waving, pointing at my car. And I thought, like, is my tire flat? Has something happened? And so I pulled over to see what was the matter. And this man got out of his car and he said, "Hi, what's your name?" And I was like, "My name's Ellen. What's going on?" And I'll make it a very short version of the story, but he said, "I'm this big time Hollywood producer." And he really was. Like, I looked him up. He really was. He had several Academy Awards. I mean, he really was a big Hollywood producer. And he really did say, "I can make you a star right now tonight. You just have to sleep with this person and this person and this person." I mean, that was an on the spot offer. And I said, "Well, I don't do that. Like, that's not a thing for me." And he said, "If you're not going to do that, you should go home right now."
Gosh.
And so I did go home, not to Utah, but I did go home, and I cried and cried. And I remember calling my parents and saying, like, "Is this true? Am I really not going to have a chance? Because I'm not going to, what he asked for, I'm not going to make that choice." But I don't want to, I don't.
How many women did he do that to that did make that choice?
Yeah, and that's their choice. Even Keith, I'm not saying that's not their choice.
No, you're right. Yep.
And I'm not even saying that's not that's just not a choice for me, right? Like, with what I believe, that wouldn't have been a good choice for me, and that would have led to a lot of years of unhappiness. So, but it is hard. Like, that was a pretty I mean, what he offered was, pretty good. Like, here's $100,000 a year, a house, a car. I'll make sure you're. Like, he named the women's careers who he had made, and
my goodness,
it was a very that's a lot to walk away from when you're 20 and trying to make it in Hollywood.
Sure. Charlotte's Web was listed as one of your favorite reads. I got to tell you, when I saw this answer, I think that might have been the first time I was ever depressed as a kid, when I read that book. I think that might have been my first experience of sadness, quite frankly, was getting to the end of that book and going, you kind of see it coming. You see it coming, and you're like, no, don't read that. Don't read that.
No, it's just one of the books I read recently, and that's because I try to read every day with my son. So my husband is currently reading The Princess Bride with him, and I was reading Charlotte's Web.
So wait a minute. So your husband gets the good memories, and then mom gets the sad story. Okay. Well, I think the next go around, when y'all are both reading at the same time, you better get a happy book.
Yeah. See, I never thought of. I guess she does die, but I always thought of it as a happy book because it's a story about friendship.
I guess. I don't know. You're talking to somebody who is obsessed with death, so that's not I'm not a good gauge for that. Okay. Favorite comfort food, popcorn.
Popcorn. who doesn't want to eat popcorn? It's just good all the time. Like if I could eat popcorn every day, I mean, there are other comfort foods I like too, but popcorn is way up there.
But when you go to a movie, do you get that theater butter popcorn stuff?
I like popcorn in all of its form. Well, I don't like it sweet.
Wait a minute.
Like other kettle corn.
I was just about to say kettle corn is superior to regular popcorn.
No, see, and I know lots of people love kettle corn or caramel corn. I am way just like, I don't like sugar that much in general. Like, you know, if you say to me,
fun, is what you're saying.
Pretty much,
oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't like sugar. I don't drink. I'm so boring.
Wow, this may be the best answer I've ever gotten for this question. If you could go back in time, if you could go back in history and meet one person, who would it be? The person who invented guacamole? That's a good one.
Okay, see, so while they say comfort food is popcorn, guacamole is way up there. Like, and I know people don't think of that as comfort food, but man, like, don't you want to tell that person thank you?
Not me.
You don't like guacamole?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Avocados, guacamole, all that, hummus, all that dippy stuff.
Oh
no.
Yeah. See, I'm way up there, and they're like, hey, dude, thank you. That time when you like fell down and you mushed up that avocado
really changed your life.
And yeah, it really did.
It reminded me though. I guess it was the whole going back in history and the fact that it's guacamole, avocados, right? It made me think of this commercial that so many people forget. It was during the Super Bowl one year, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And I thought it was just so creative, so well done. And it was like the prehistoric draft, okay? And so all the different countries of the world got to draft, right? And so Mexico drafts because it was a commercial for avocados from Mexico, right? And so Mexico drafts the avocado, and like the polar bear is all upset and sad because he wanted to live down where it was sunny and warm. Anyway, that's what made me think of that commercial. So congratulations. I realize I am in this severe minority when it comes to guacamole and avocado. So I get it.
It can be an acquired taste. Okay. I get that part too.
You regret the cutting of your hair really short. When was that?
Somewhere while I was producing. I see. So look at my hair right now, Keith. My hair is long.
Okay.
But look how I'm wearing it. It's up in a little knot, you know. And so I thought, well, since I always wear my hair up, because it's just more convenient. I don't like it. Like, I'd like it to be long, but I don't like it hanging in my face because when I'm working, it's
I don't know the feeling, as you referenced earlier with my scalp
your scalp showing. So I cut it short thinking that would be great because then it wouldn't be in my way. But see, then you can't pull it up. And I don't like it touching me at all. So I should probably just do what you've done and shave it is probably what I should do. But
okay, next time you visit, come during the summer when it's hot in Texas, right? And let's see this new do. I want to see that.
I am not thinking it would be a good look for me.
Okay. Checking your Amazon cart right now. You say there's calf feed in there.
Yeah.
How many?
Well, what I didn't want to say. And so now I'm going to say it anyway. And I knew you would get me to say one thing that I was like, I don't want to say that because it'll come off controversial to somebody. But what is in my cart right now is calf feed and calf weaning rings.
What? Why is that controversial?
Because they're like a nose ring. You know, like a bull wears a nose ring.
Yeah.
But
what is that all about anyway?
That's so they can tie a rope on it and lead them around.
Oh my gosh! Look. I'm sorry. I am completely honest with this audience. I've always seen the bull with the ring cartoon nose, you know, and you're like, what is? I never thought about the next step. I didn't even think of that.
So when you're trying to wean a calf and get it to stop suckling off of its mother, you put like this nose ring in, but the nose ring has spikes, so that when the calf goes to try to suckle, the spikes like poke into the mom, and she kicks the calf off.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's actually because it's weaning time.
See, I live near a field where the cows roam around, and you'll hear on occasion the moms wandering around looking for their babies, right? And you're like, oh no, there's a separation that's happened.
But they always find. So the first year that we had calves, and it was, you know, Shannon and I are up at the ranch, and we're not ranchers. We have become ranchers, but at this point we weren't.
Okay.
We would get up in the middle of the night, like we would hear a cow mooing to her calf, and we would get up like, we got to go help her. Like,
Right,
she's not
something's
her.
up.
Oh my goodness. And now we realize, like, oh, they find their calf. Like, they find her. They always
I had
find
the
them.
same reaction, and my neighbor finally enlightens me, and he's like, just...
They're going to find them.
Yeah, it's
cool. It's
gorgeous.
amazing. It's miraculous that they can find each other. And I mean, we have thousands of acres and hundreds of cows, and that, they find each other.
So if I'm a newborn calf, right, and I hear a mama's voice from the other side of the field, do I know that's my mom?
Totally.
Or, really?
It's
not just some rando cow out there making noise?
Well, it could be a rando cow out there making
That's
noise.
what I'm saying. Is the baby able to discern that?
They are completely able to discern it. It's quite. They're fascinating animals.
I've
I
heard
love them.
they're smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, I love my cows.
Huh. On a plate?
No, well, I do love to eat them too. As a matter of fact, I have a couple that are getting ready for that right now. But
we might tag PETA in this episode as a key word. No, okay. So all right, almost done here, and then I promise to let you go. The most you listed the most scared you've ever been as sitting down for this podcast. Please tell me it's been a piece of cake.
It has been a piece of cake.
Everybody says it's less stressful when they're at the end. They're always like, "Wow, this wasn't as bad as I thought." Well,
but here's the thing. As an actress, I don't actually I like when someone scripts my lines for me. When I have to talk extemporaneously, I'm afraid I'll just be a nincompoop. And now I realize I was a nincompoop, but that's been totally okay because you were equally nincompoopish.
Wait a minute, don't throw me under the bus. I agree.
So together we made a very good team.
Yeah, I think so. But before we go, yesterday when I saw you here in the building, you were telling me, we got off on a conversation about the time you were near Mount St. Helens. Can you share that? Because, I mean, you had ash. Of all this would happen to me, Ellen, where I would fly to the middle of nowhere in Washington State just as I'm landing. A volcano erupts for the first time in who knows how long, that devastates the region. This was your experience in 1980. And tell us how that was with the way you described the sky and the ash. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I was right there with you.
So this is that play that I was touring in, right?
Wow.
That I left college to go tour in this play. And we would do our performances, but on the weekends and in between, we would go do firesides, like religious firesides.
Uh-huh.
So we would split up the cast into groups of 2 and 3 and go meet with congregations and speak to the youth. That's the kind of thing that you do when you're touring. So we were flying into Washington, and as we flew in, they announced on the plane that Mount St. Helens had just erupted. Now, this wasn't in the time of internet, so you didn't have the ready kind of information. It's not like everybody whipped out their phones then and went like, oh, I wonder what that means. The pilot just made an announcement. Oh, Mount St. Helens has just erupted. And even once you landed, there wasn't just ready information everywhere. All of America, that announcement came over the news. Mount St. Helens erupted. But it wasn't until 8 or 10 hours later that we were like, oh, and it's causing this major devastation across the whole region, right? Like in the beginning, it seemed like, oh, look, it made the mountain explode.
Sure.
But we didn't realize what was going to happen spreading to the west. To the east. So we landed in a city that was east of Mount St. Helens, and we were heading into the church, and you can look off on the horizon, way off on the horizon, like clear out there, and you can just see a line of what looks like dark clouds, but it's blacker than dark clouds. It's just this little line. And we're like, wow, look at that. Look at those dark clouds rolling in. That's what we thought. I mean, there was no news that something bad was coming. Just, oh, look at those dark clouds coming. And we went in and we start the fireside, and we sing to the kids, and we give talks, and we're praying together. And all of a sudden someone comes running up from the back of the congregation and talks to the man who's presiding, and he gets up immediately, like right in the middle of someone's talk, and says, "Excuse me, we've been asked by the authorities to go home. Everyone needs to go home. We're going to have a closing prayer right now. Get in your cars and go home. So we come out from the church that we're in, and now on the opposite horizon, you can just see a little patch of blue sky left.
Wow.
And it's so amazing to have seen it. Like it was, an hour ago, it was black on one, just a little line of black. Now the entire sky is black, and there's just a little crack of
Middle
blue
of the day.
sky. Middle of the day. And we just stand there, the three of us, the two men that I'm with from the play. We just stand there. Everybody else is jumping in their cars. They're going home. We don't have a home, right? Like we don't live here. So they're jumping in their cars to go home. We look at that little crack, and literally as the ash, we don't know at that point that it's ash. We know that it's something to do with volcano, but we don't know what. As it closes that little crack in the sky, all of a sudden, blackness, like a kind of blackness that I've never seen, is you cannot see anywhere. It's just there is no light left. You can't see 8 feet in front of you because all the light is blocked. Wow. The street lights aren't on or anything because it's the middle of the day. Right. So it's just black, completely black. So we get in our car and we start driving to what we think is the hotel. We see on our way a Taco Bell. So we stop in the Taco Bell. Everything else is closed by this point. We see a Taco Bell and we go in, and they're closing up, and we say, can we get some food? And they're like, no. They decided to sell us what they had left. By the time we get to the hotel, the ash, because it's way up high in the sky, is starting to fall down. Like it's actually starting to fill up the sky with like a haze. God. And we spent the next 3 days stuck in this hotel. And I would say
with leftover Taco Bell.
That we're keeping cold on ice from the hotel machine. And I would say it's very much like going through this pandemic in that this was completely unexpected. No one had any answers. So one minute you would hear, there's nothing to fear from the ash. Like it won't hurt you. Mm-hmm. And the next minute you would hear, no, you can't go outside. Like this was on the news every few minutes. 20 minutes later, if you go outside and you breathe the ash, you're going to like get cancer in your lungs and you'll die. And the next minute would be like, oh, you can go outside, but be sure you put on a mask, something to cover your face so you're not breathing in the ash. And the next minute would say, put on not just a mask, a wet mask. And then half an hour later, they'd say, whatever you do, don't put on a wet mask because that makes the stuff toxic. That makes the ash toxic. So it was a totally fearful time. And in rolls the National Guard and in rolls armies, and no one's allowed to leave. Like, because they don't, it's scary enough. I know that this didn't seem like this if you weren't in the middle of the ash, but they didn't know if like something was happening to all of us who were there. So you weren't allowed to leave, and you weren't allowed to drive out because you couldn't see. You couldn't see more than 10 or 15 feet because ash kept falling from the skies for days. So we sat there for a while, and then we realized after, 2.5 days, like, if we're going to die, if we're going to die here, if we're going to die from being in this ash anyway, we might as well die trying to get out and get back and see our families. There weren't cell phones. We hadn't talked to our parents. We couldn't get a line going out.
Wow, that must have been tough.
So it was a very interesting time. So we got in the car. We got in our rented car, and we went and found one store that was open that had an extra air filter. So we bought an extra air filter for our car. And then we decided we would go out to dinner. There was one restaurant in town open at some big, nice hotel. So we went to that hotel in case it was the last meal we ever ate. I mean, that's literally what we were thinking to ourselves. Like, goodness. What if we die on the way trying to drive out? So we went and had this one last meal at the hotel. We came out of the hotel, and now ash is ash. And when I say ash, it's like talcum powder. That's the best way I can describe it. It's about the consistency of flour or talcum powder. And the ash is about 1 foot to 1.5 foot deep everywhere that you go. So you're just walking through it. And when you walk, it's just poofing up like flour would. It was kind of fun. So we were stomping. Because, I was only 18. Yeah. So we were kind of stomping and making it poof. And then we realized this is really fun. So we scooped up a great big pile of it, like as tall as one of us. Then we would run and jump in it. And just, it would kind of catch you and poof out all over. Anyway, so we played in the ash that night, and then we went home and showered, and we got up the next morning and we ventured out. And we had to take all back roads because the main roads were closed off by the National Guard.
Wow.
And on my way out of town, this is it's pretty scary, right? Like, I have to say, it was kind of terrifying, and everyone was terrified. Like, everything stopped there. But on my way out of town, I noticed something. As you got further away, especially out of the main part of the city that we were in, into the suburbs, what I saw were people out and about. Some of them were wearing masks and some of them weren't wearing masks because nobody knew what the right advice was. But they were out there with their shovels and their rakes and their buckets, even though what they had been told is you have to stay inside. But they weren't staying inside. They were out there cleaning off the streets and the sidewalks and their yards and their furniture. And they were going to put their lives back together and make things get back to normal. And they weren't waiting for the government to come in and do it for them. And they weren't waiting to be told it was all right. They were just doing it. And it had a big impact on me as I drove out of town. And when we finally got far west enough to join up with the rest of our group and got out of where there wasn't ash anymore and life was back to normal. And it was so interesting to see that. But like, as you drove out of it, like, the rest of American life had just gone on. Like, nothing had stopped for them, right? Like, they were hearing about it on TV, but they were still just going to the store and getting Slurpees at 7-Eleven. It was exactly the same for them. And as I got into my hotel room that night, I went out onto the balcony to just take a breath and be alone for a minute. And I thought, oh my goodness, that was really terrifying. And one of the only times that I've ever felt like, I don't know, some sort of personal revelatory moment. Not like God spoke to me in some big booming voice, but the impression came to me very strongly. This is what it will be like at the end of the world. Things will be hard and there will be devastation, but people will work so quickly to put it back to normal. And it won't be happening everywhere all at once. I mean, even in this pandemic, going through COVID, things, it hit certain areas harder than it hit other areas. And mostly what we're trying to do all the time is get back to normal. And what God was trying to let me know is the end of the world will still come as a thief in the night, even though the devastations will come and even though things will be falling apart, because man is so compelled to take care of himself and go back to normal, that even in the midst of the upheaval and the difficulty, we won't be able to. Life isn't just going to fall apart and we all go back to horse and buggies and no electricity. I mean, that doesn't mean those things may not happen.
I was saying, what if there's an EMP?
But that doesn't mean those things may not happen to a little area at a little time. But even if there is an EMP, we'll put it back together as quickly as we can. We're not just going to all of a sudden say, okay, now I'm just going to burn coal and sit around a fire, in my camping out in my backyard. I'm not saying that something that bad might not happen for a few days, but we won't subsist like that forever because we know we have the knowledge to put it back to normal. And I'm not saying that means it's good that we put it back to normal. It means that, in my belief that Christ is coming, he could still come even with the devastation that's going on and us not recognize how close it is.
Well said. This has been a great conversation. Is there anything we've missed that we need to cover here, or you feel like we've sufficiently covered all the ground? I think the
only thing we haven't covered is how devastatingly blue your eyes are.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I always called him Hazel.
Oh, but here in this light, your eyes are just very,
I think it's
very
just
blue.
I think it's the natural light right here.
It's fantastic.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for making time. I'm so glad we could make this work. And you better let me know next time you're coming to Dallas. I don't want to just stumble on you out here in the hallway.
Well, if you had your eyes open, then you wouldn't be stumbling over the people in the hallway.
That was weak. All right. Thank you, Ellen Wheeler, sitting down with me on At the Mic. It was so great getting to know more of Ellen Wheeler's story. I hope you enjoyed our time with her as well. I tell you what, If you wouldn't mind doing this podcast a huge favor, could you take a moment over the next week to tell a friend about At the Mic? You could text them the link to atthemicshow.com and tell them that, look, conversations that are easy to listen to are waiting for them. So if they need something to kind of shake up their podcast library, send them the link to atthemicshow.com, available on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Play, all over the place. So if you could share this show with someone that you like, or maybe send it to an enemy, maybe it could bring you guys together. We'd so much appreciate it. So thank you for listening. Oh, and don't forget show merchandise available at atthemicshop.com. I appreciate it when you check that out. We try to add new stuff as often as we can. Next week, I hope you'll join us when we sit down with J.P. Decker. He and I have worked together at The Blaze. Now he's with the charity Mercury One. He's a great guy, and it's a fun conversation that I hope you will join us for. But until then, please go be free, and thank you for listening.
This has been At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.